presentation will be entitled The War on Consciousness. And this is a brilliant topic. And so this next talk is the one I believe that was banned.
Yes, banned by Ted.
By Ted, and you're going to be hearing it. So let's have a round of applause for the remarkable Graham Hancock.
Thank you. Yeah. So just as a preamble, while we're waiting for a few more people to come in, I was invited by Ted to give a presentation at a TEDx conference in London. TEDx is not the main TED conference. These are conferences that are independently organized by very good-spirited and well-meaning people all around the world. And while I make these comments about TED, I want to say that there are some incredible talks on TED. And TED is I was so pleased that I was asked to speak, and I thought, you know, TED is this amazing, open-minded institution which is exploring cutting-edge ideas. I felt very honored to be asked to speak at TEDx. And interestingly, the theme of the conference that I was asked to speak at was creating new paradigms and challenging existing structures. So I felt very at home there. And I was one of a number of speakers, and another speaker who was there was my friend Rupert Sheldrake, who has written, who's done great scientific work into areas that most scientists will not study, such as telepathy, such as the sense of being stared at, such as why dogs know when their owners are coming home, even if the owner varies their pattern of return and doesn't come at the same time, why we know when the phone rings who's on the other end of the line. We've all had these experiences, and science dismisses all of that because science has this very materialist view of consciousness, that consciousness is simply an epiphenomenon of matter, and that therefore the notion that there could be long-range communications, just they don't see the material structures that could underwrite telepathy, for example. So Rupert has come up again and again against the scientific establishment, and he wrote a book called The Science Delusion. And that book is slightly poking fun at Professor Richard Dawkins, who wrote a book called The God Delusion. And our talks were put on YouTube and very rapidly started to attract lots of views, which I was very happy with, until the word came to me through the organizers of the conference. They'd been sent an email by TED telling them that they had to take my talk down. And they also had to take down Rupert Sheldrake's talk. Well, they let us know the organizers didn't feel happy about doing this, and they said, we've been instructed to do this, but we're going to try and fight it. And they informed us. So the first thing I did was I went on my Facebook, and I put out a message saying, it looks like my talk is going to be censored. Would anybody out there who knows how to do this download the talk and preserve it in some way? Which a lot of people did. And a lot of people sent letters to TED complaining, because they did pull it within a few hours that day. Now, the reasons they said they pulled it was that both Rupert and I were accused of pseudoscience. They said that the stuff that we were saying in our talks was not supported by mainstream science. They made all kinds of statements about my talk in writing when they justified why they were taking it offline. All kinds of statements about my talk, not a single one of which was true. They completely misrepresented the content of the talk. And they did the same with Rupert. It was as though they had a kind of concept of what our talks might be about, but that they hadn't actually listened to the talks. So they expressed their concept in the critique rather than the content of the talks. So we went back to them, and actually what we said to them is, you know, you are defaming us here. You are accusing us of pseudoscience falsely. Can you stand up any single one of the statements you've made about our talks? And it turned out they couldn't stand up any single one. And they had to back off. So what we had them do, so that it was on the record, was on the web page where they'd made these statements, we had them cross out the statements. They put lines through them, and then they published our rebuttal underneath. And they put our talks up there, but still to this day, they've refused to put them back on the TEDx YouTube channel. They've put them in what Rupert calls a naughty corner on the TED website. And really it turned out that this was something to do with corporate branding, that TED has a concept of its corporate brand, and it has certain major corporate supporters. And some of the stuff we were saying in our talks, for example, I have something to say about Big Pharma in my talk, seemed to offend these corporate supporters. And that's really the reason why our talks got taken down. Anyway, thanks to guerrilla action on the internet, my talk, which had had 132,000 views before they pulled it off their YouTube channel, has now had hundreds of thousands of other views all over the world. So the message is that if you try to suppress something on the internet, it's going to go viral. And I believe it's called the Streisand effect, because apparently there's some story of this. Anyway, it's been an extraordinary thing, but at the heart of it is the conflict between materialist science, the notion that there is no mystery in existence and that everything may be reduced to matter, and other kinds of science which are saying that consciousness in particular is a huge mystery, and that it cannot be simply defined as an epiphenomenon of brain activity. This is at the heart of it, and this is a real dispute in science. And I came to realize that actually the whole controversy, at the end of the day, it wasn't really about Rupert and me, and it wasn't really, even our role in it was not important. What was important was the schism that is taking place in science right now. And I'm pleased to say that Deepak Chopra managed to get together 15 high-ranking scientists, including neurologists, professors of anesthesiology and others, who all wrote an open letter to TED protesting at the outrageous censorship of our talks, that they had been removed. And it was, you know, I'm very grateful to him for having done that. And what it made clear is that there are scientists who are open to different ideas of consciousness and who don't insist that it's just an accidental byproduct of these few pounds of jelly inside our brains. So the story of human evolution, in my opinion, is from the last common ancestor with the chimpanzee through until anatomically modern humans. That's what I call 6 million years of boredom. Because for most of that 6 million years, our ancestors were incredibly dull. They created the first stone tools about 2.5 million years ago. Those stone tools were extremely rudimentary, but they stuck with them without any change for the next million years. And then when they did introduce a new tool type, they stuck with that for another million years as well. So they were passing down cultural information, but they were not innovating. And there's no evidence of spirituality, no evidence in any belief in an afterlife. These creatures were, well, incredibly boring. And that continued even after we became anatomically modern, which is around about the earliest undisputed anatomically modern human skeleton dates back about 195,000 years from Ethiopia. And the boring behavior continued even after that moment. We had all the hardware in place to be the kind of creature we are today, but it seems the software was not present. And then, after 100,000 years ago, something happened, and it becomes particularly evident after 40,000 years ago. It's as though a light has been switched on in the human brain all around the world. And that coincides with the appearance of the first great cave art. Astonishingly sophisticated art starts to materialize in caves and in rock shelters all around the world, with certain universal themes in the art, certain patterns that appear again and again and again. Certain figures, such as therianthropes, creatures that are part animal and part human in form. You can see them in the canyons in Utah. You can see them in rock shelters in South Africa. You can see them in the painted caves in France. Something universal was going on, some inspiration had struck our human ancestors. And even though they were not in touch with one another or comparing notes, they were all producing astonishingly similar imagery. For a long time, scholars couldn't figure out what cave art was about. There was a prevailing misconception is still in place with many people who are not up to date with the literature, that cave art was about hunting magic, that they were seeking to possess the spirit of the animal they wanted to hunt, and that they would depict it pierced for that reason. But in fact, only 2% of all the animal figures painted on the walls of caves are pierced in any way. The hunting magic theory has been effectively completely dismissed. For example, there's no relationship between the animals that were eaten around a particular cave and the animals that are painted inside that cave. That model has been overthrown, although the misconception prevails. During the last 20 to 25 years, a number of scholars from a number of different fields have been homing in on the truth. And one of them is depicted here, and that's Professor David Lewis Williams from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. And the truth is rather shocking, that what seems to have turned our ancestors on was encounters with visionary plants. In Europe, the psilocybin mushroom, Psilocybe semilanciata. In many other parts of the world, the fly agaric, the Amanita muscaria, seem to have played a key role. And part of David's research has involved comparing imagery created by modern volunteers who've been given powerful hallucinogens in lab situations and comparing it with the imagery on the walls of the painted caves. And there are just stunning comparisons. I go into this all at great length in my book, Supernatural, if you want to look at the documentation of it. But what it comes down to is this, that art on the walls of the painted caves is an art of altered states of consciousness. It is visionary art. It is, in other words, shamanistic art. Shamans, to this day, continue to use visionary plants. It's by no means the only way of getting into a deeply altered state of consciousness. And some of us have a negative reaction to the notion of visionary plants. Bear in mind that there's a global, one could almost call it a shamanistic technology of altered states of consciousness. And it can involve rhythmic dancing, it can involve fasting, it can involve sensory deprivation, even meditation will do it. The point is to get out of the normal everyday state of consciousness and into a trance-like state. And trance is the key universal element of shamanism. And visionary plants undoubtedly play a great role in it. So, as a researcher, when I began to look into this, I've always felt that I have to experience what I'm talking about. It's useless to sit in an armchair. I've got to do this. And although I'd had one encounter with LSD at the age of 24, which was rather interesting, I hadn't taken any more psychedelics ever after that until I was well into my 50s. When I began to research my book, Supernatural. And that's when I discovered that shamans in the Amazon, to this day, are drinking a powerful visionary brew, and afterwards, after they've been into deep trance, they will paint their visions. And their paintings are just so similar in many ways, in the detail, to the paintings we find on the walls of the painted caves. And the visionary plant of choice in the Amazon is, of course, the famous ayahuasca, the vine of souls, or the vine of the dead. And ayahuasca has two ingredients. One, we're looking at one of them here, which is the bush that they call chacruna in the Amazon. That is called Psychotria viridis, is the botanical name. And in the leaves of Psychotria viridis are powerful concentrations of dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is arguably the most powerful hallucinogen known to man. But DMT is not normally orally active. You can drink a tea made of these leaves on its own, and it will have no effect on you whatsoever. That's because there's an enzyme in our stomachs called monoamine oxidase, which switches off DMT on contact. So if people want to experience DMT today, they usually smoke it. That gets it straight into the brain, and it produces a 12-minute rocket ship journey to the other side of reality. It is a most extraordinary thing. I've experienced smoked DMT 11 times. Not likely to experience it again, I think, because the last experience really shook me to my roots. But perhaps I will. You know, you have to brace yourself for these experiences. They are often not fun. Anyway, in the Amazon, they have found a way of making DMT orally active. And this says something about shamanistic technology. Because in the Amazon, there's 150,000 different species of plants and trees. But one of them, this one, the ayahuasca vine, contains a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. So if you mix together the leaves from the bush and lengths of the vine and cook them with water, you end up with a brew that inhibits monoamine oxidase and allows the DMT to become orally active. It's quite a feat of chemistry and hardly possible to do by trial and error. The shamans say they were taught how to do it by spirits. So off I went to the Amazon in 2003 to drink ayahuasca. And that is the ayahuasca brew in the hands of a shaman there. That's the little cup of concentrated ayahuasca that you drink. You can get it more watered down. Just involves having to suffer the ghastly taste for longer. Really, the smaller, more concentrated version is preferable because just drink it back really, really fast and hold your nose. It does taste hideous. Old socks, sulfur, raw sewage, battery acid, and, you know, just a hint of chocolate. And you know, nobody is doing this for fun. It gives you diarrhea, it makes you vomit, break out in sweats, you know, physically it's a tough ordeal. I've just completed I think my 52nd session of ayahuasca. There was a friend of mine actually tells us a little joke about him because he facilitates ayahuasca sessions, and somebody came to him and he said, you know, is ayahuasca addictive? And he said, no. His answer was, no, it's not addictive. I know it's not addictive. I've drunk it more than 1,000 times. But truly, it's not addictive. You have to really prepare yourself. I don't look forward to it because it's a tough journey, but I feel that I learn something useful from it every time. Well, one of the first messages is that your body is the least important part of yourself. That what's happening to you at the level of the physical body doesn't really matter. What's happening to you at the level of consciousness is what's important. And Pablo Amaringo, a great Amazonian shaman, passed away a couple of years ago, gives some indication of the enchanted realms that ayahuasca takes you into in these visionary experiences, because after about 45 minutes, you do get that sense of gradually entering into a seamlessly convincing other reality, which is inhabited by intelligent entities, intelligent beings who communicate with you telepathically. I think you're beginning to understand why Ted banned my talk now. And have lessons to teach you, important lessons to teach you. All around the world, whether in Japan, whether in New York, whether in London, whether in the Amazon jungle, more and more people are being drawn to work with ayahuasca. And it's a very mysterious process, because what all of us are reporting are encounters with a particular entity who we tend to construe as a goddess. You know, when you go on TED and talk about meeting a goddess, you're just going to get banned. And that's kind of what I did. Because that's how I see Mother Ayahuasca. Now, I make no claim to the reality status of Mother Ayahuasca. I am not insisting that she is real. She could be a projection of my own brain. There may be no reality to her whatsoever. But if there's no reality to her whatsoever, I want to understand, you know, why somebody in Japan and somebody in New York also meets her and describes her in the same way, as a great healer, as a great teacher, and as a source of inspiration. The painting on the right is by Martina Hoffman, who is a visionary artist from Boulder, Colorado. And she is showing the various transformations of Mother Ayahuasca, who sometimes is a woman, sometimes is a serpent, sometimes is a jaguar, a panther. She's a shapeshifter. She can take many, many forms. And what Martina is also indicating there is the only possible posture in relation to Mother Ayahuasca, which is one of complete surrender. Because you know that DMT journey takes 12 minutes, but the Ayahuasca journey takes 4 hours. And when you go on that journey, it truly is a journey into extraordinary realms. And you will get lessons and teachings there. You will be shown episodes from your own life. You will be shown how you were cruel and hurtful to others, and how you excused yourself for that behavior. And Mother Ayahuasca will strip away all your illusions and make you see the truth about yourself. So whether she's real or whether she's a figment of our imaginations, the most interesting thing is the effect that she has on your behavior, because she makes you want to be a better person. You want to fix your life. You want to be less toxic. You want to be more loving and more contributing and more helpful to others. And if you have areas where you're damaged in ways, she will help you to heal them. And that is why I believe that ayahuasca has been incredibly successful in getting people off addictions to hard drugs, such as heroin and cocaine. This is a great untold story. You know, we don't need big pharma to get people off drug addictions. Ayahuasca is doing the job incredibly well. Dr. Jacques Mabit has a clinic called Taquihuasi at Tarapoto in Peru, and he brings out deeply addicted individuals for 12 sessions of ayahuasca over a period of a month. More than half of them leave the clinic completely free of their addiction and never go back to it again. And the same was happening in Canada with Dr. Gabor Mate, who was also giving ayahuasca to drug addicts and achieving astonishing results. They don't even have withdrawal symptoms. They just stop taking the hard drug. But the Canadian government stepped in and closed down his practice and stopped him administering ayahuasca on the grounds that ayahuasca was itself a drug. And this is a sign of one of the problems in our society, that we have this universal term. What we're really dealing with ayahuasca is an ancient and sacred medicine. And I speak from some experience in this. I was never addicted to heroin or cocaine. This is where I have to bare my heart to you and tell you that I did have a long relationship with one substance, and that substance was cannabis. And I started smoking cannabis at the age of 37 in 1987, and I continued to smoke cannabis right through until 2011, when I stopped dead in my tracks. And for me, I don't want to put cannabis down. I want to recognize that cannabis also is a herbal ally, and that many people benefit from cannabis, and that the pain-relieving effects of cannabis and many other effects are very positive. It's also a rather sensuous drug. It does enhance enjoyment of food, of music. There's a lot of very positive things about cannabis, and I'm not sure I would ever have written my Ancient Mysteries books if I hadn't encountered cannabis in my 30s. But after a while, my relationship with cannabis became abusive. I'm not blaming the herb, I'm blaming myself. I stopped using it just at evenings and weekends, and I started using it all day long. My kids told me about a thing called a vaporizer, where you don't need to actually smoke combustion products. You can generate steam from your cannabis, and that's what this baggie on top of that volcano vaporizer is about. And that's how I used to consume it. And I would write with it, and I would fire up my vaporizer at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it would still be going at 2 o'clock the next morning, 7 days a week. I was consuming, by the mid-2000s, huge amounts of cannabis. And it was affecting my behavior in all sorts of ways. You know, it's nice to be stoned, but it's not a good idea to be stoned all the time. We need a respectful relationship to these plants, and my relationship had become slavish and disrespectful. All this time I was drinking ayahuasca. I started drinking ayahuasca in 2003, and right from the beginning, ayahuasca was giving me messages about cannabis. You need to stop doing this. And I was ignoring those messages because I felt that I needed the cannabis. I was terrified that I couldn't write without it, that it was a central issue in my life. But in 2011, Santa and I flew down to Brazil for 5 ayahuasca sessions, and I was taken through the most extraordinary ordeal. I don't know whether there's such a place as hell or not, but I was shown something like hell. I was given a review of my own life. I was shown that my behavior had become toxic, that I was not helpful to my partner, that I was causing her pain and misery, and that this had to stop. And I was shown it in the most direct and forceful manner. I was shown that my immortal destiny was in danger if I continued down this road, that I was poised on the edge of an abyss. And it was something like the Judgment Hall of Osiris, where, and this is a very profound moment in ancient Egyptian spiritual ideas, where your heart is metaphorically weighed in the scales against the feather of truth and cosmic justice. And there is nothing you can hide. Every act, every thought, every deed, every moment of your life is transparent and open for view. And I was shown this transparency, and I was shown that I was going down the wrong track. And that this was deeply connected to my relationship to cannabis. And that the only way out of it was to stop smoking cannabis. So I had that resolution that I would stop smoking cannabis. It was given to me very strongly in a series of teachings in 5 ayahuasca sessions. But so powerful was the pull of cannabis on me that when I got back to England, the first thing I did after a long flight was get out my vaporizer and fire it up. And that's when I discovered I'd been healed. Because I took one puff and I could not continue. I was filled with such horror and revulsion, just awful feelings, that I physically could not continue, even though part of me wanted to. And I put it away, and since that day, I have never touched cannabis again. And while I want to repeat that I do not want to put cannabis down, and I don't want to put down others who use cannabis and get great benefits from it, my relationship with it was wrong. It was abusive, and I absolutely needed to stop. And stopping it, I feel like a monkey's been taken off my back. I feel liberated. Those feelings of paranoia and suspicion and jealousy, completely gone away. I feel so much happier. I have no doubts, no paranoia, no jealousy. I feel completely relaxed and comfortable in my skin. And my fear that I wouldn't be able to write, well, that's turned out as nonsense as well. I'm far more productive as a writer now and far more creative than I was when I was stoned all day long. So I had a profound healing as a result of Mother Ayahuasca and as a result of visionary experiences. And to me, that is a mystery. That is a huge mystery. And it is in some way related to the problem of death, because I was shown my death and what would lie beyond death if I didn't fix this course in my life. You know, we have an incredibly precious opportunity to be born in a human body, and part of that opportunity is the opportunity to learn from our mistakes. We get many, many years on this planet, and we do make mistakes, but we have a chance to learn and fix things, and I was given a revelation that enabled me to fix this, and I feel more comfortable about whatever I will face after death as a result of having made those changes. But here's the scientific definition of death, that it's the complete cessation of brain function as evidenced by absence of brainwave activity on an electroencephalogram. And I just really hate that definition, because we are not our brains. We are our consciousness. And consciousness is a mystery. It's a huge mystery of science. No scientist can honestly stand their hand on heart and say that he has figured out consciousness. We all know we have it. We know that the brain is involved in it in some way, but the exact relationship between the brain and consciousness is not clear. You know, these few pounds of jelly, as I mentioned, inside our skulls, how do they produce the emotions that we feel when we're in love? How does that come about? The sense of just looking at a glorious sunset or listening to a fantastic symphony, the conscious experience that we have, how can we reduce that to physical brain activity? Something in us rejects that idea. There must be something beyond, something other. Many scientists who believe that the brain is the whole explanation for consciousness say, but look, if I damage a particular area of your brain, then a particular area of your consciousness is lost. So this proves that the brain makes consciousness. And this is actually the mainstream model of scientific materialism, that the brain makes consciousness the way a generator makes electricity. When you have that view, you can't possibly believe in life after death, because once the generator is destroyed, that's the end of your consciousness, and there's nothing else there. And this is the dominant reference frame of mainstream science today. But what they're missing is another possibility, which is that the relationship of consciousness to the brain, and this is an analogy, could be more like the relationship of the TV signal to the TV set. And there I would say to the scientist, yes, if I damage my TV screen, it will certainly affect the picture I see, but the signal's still there. The signal's unchanged. And you can destroy your TV set completely and the signal is still there. So maybe that's what's happening. Maybe the brain is mediating consciousness in some way. Maybe it's a transceiver or a receiver of consciousness rather than a generator of consciousness. And this is in fact the paradigm of all spiritual traditions, that we are incarnated in these bodies, that we are immortal spirits who incarnate in these forms to undergo certain experiences, certain learning experiences. But that when we die, the physical body dies, but the spirit continues. And frankly, if you want to learn more about the mystery of life after death, the very last people you should be asking are materialist reductionist scientists. Because for them, there's just nothing at all. I don't know how they think they know that, you know, having had no experience whatsoever of the matter, but they have this reference frame that they are confusing with the facts. They think it's a fact that there's no life after death, but actually that's just their belief system. The ancient Egyptians put their best minds to work for 3,000 years on this mystery. And they came to certain very specific conclusions, that we are here to learn and grow and develop, that we are reborn in these bodies, and that after death we undertake a journey on which we must account for everything that we've done with our lives. And it's now clear that in their deep explorations of the mystery of death, the ancient Egyptians, just like shamans today, were using visionary plants. And there's some excellent studies on this that have been done by people like William Emberden and Rosalie David. The Blue Lotus, for example, used in inducing trance-like states in which a priesthood would explore the afterlife realm rather than simply imagine it. And most intriguingly, as I mentioned in my other talk, the ancient Egyptian tree of life is Acacia nilotica. And Acacia nilotica is particularly rich in dimethyltryptamine, in DMT. It's quite a chemical operation to get the DMT out of the bark of the tree, but the ancient Egyptians were master chemists. In fact, the very word chemistry comes from the Arabic name for ancient Egypt, al-Kemt. So I don't think they would have had a problem in extracting DMT from the tree of life, and I think it's intriguing that it is depicted as such. At any rate, it's hard to imagine a society more different from ancient Egypt than our society today. You know, DMT is actually a natural brain hormone. We all have it in our bodies. If you go out and have your blood or your cerebrospinal fluid or your urine assayed, you will find that it contains dimethyltryptamine. So we're all illegal in this room. It contains it usually in subpsychedelic quantities, but it's there. And we don't know why the brain, it's thought that it is produced in the pineal gland, which interestingly is the third eye. We don't know why the brain is producing dimethyltryptamine. But it's a serious criminal offense in our society to possess DMT, whether in its smokable form or as part of the ayahuasca brew. And you know, you can have your life ruined for possession of any of the ancient and sacred visionary plants. You can have your door broken down, you can have your reputation destroyed, you can have your property confiscated, you can have your liberty taken away for up to 30 years. So our society is deeply opposed. What I take from this is deeply opposed to certain altered states of consciousness. But it's not opposed to all altered states of consciousness. In fact, our society is involved in the management of consciousness to an extraordinary degree. And huge pharmaceutical corporations are making billions of dollars every year out of inventing new syndromes for which new medications will be prescribed. And having experienced depression myself, and having, at a certain period of my life, having taken Prozac and Seroxat, I would say Prozac and Seroxat are just the worst things for depression. They're really, really bad, and we need to find some other way to manage. I'm not saying there's no such thing as depression, and James was talking about it yesterday. We need to find some other way to manage it and realize that there are challenges for us in depression from which we can learn. At any rate, out of depression, billions of dollars are being made. Out of attention deficit disorder, billions of dollars are being made. And all of these drugs that are being sold for vast sums of money that are making huge corporations enormously rich are drugs that alter consciousness in very fundamental ways. So clearly there's no objection in principle to altering consciousness. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all of these consciousness management drugs. And then, of course, there's alcohol, which is hugely glorified in our society. And again, which is at the heart of a massive industry, which makes enormous sums of money. You know, the world's most boring drug, vastly overhyped. And there it is. And it has horrible effects on behavior. And it's incredibly dangerous to health. Very, very damaging to health. Alcoholism is an enormous problem. The problem of drunk drivers, people drunk on the streets. Let's not pretend that this is free of problems. Alcohol is a huge problem in our society. I'm not saying it should be banned. I don't believe in banning anything. I think adults should make their own choices about what they do with their bodies. But I'm saying that we are a society that glorifies one particular alteration of consciousness and demonizes another. And that is hypocritical. Even tea and coffee and energy drinks are also valued for the effects that they have on consciousness. And I don't mind that. I like a cup of coffee myself, and I like a glass of wine. But what I do mind is this selectiveness, this choosing of certain kinds of altering of consciousness which are fine, and then sending us to prison for 30 years for other kinds of altering consciousness. That seems to me profoundly wrong. We have to ask ourselves, why is that selectiveness there? And I think it's there because our society particularly values and glorifies one state of consciousness. And that is the state of consciousness called the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. And the other drugs that our society does sanction for altering consciousness, they, in a way, they don't interfere with this alert, problem-solving state of consciousness and our commitment to production and consumption that is associated with it, because these are the kind of things that the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness is good for. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. We do need that state of consciousness. What I'm saying is the problem is an over-monopolistic dependence on that state of consciousness and a denial of the value of other ancient and sacred shamanistic altered states of consciousness, which may be fundamental to our health and well-being. And that would be fine if the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness was delivering the goods. But in fact, in our society, what we see is a total collapse and breakdown of the model based on the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. Anybody who's been through the effects of the financial crisis will know that all the promises that were made by our society to deliver us prosperity and security and welfare are empty and meaningless promises that have no substance to them whatsoever. And you know that our lords and masters can go on magically printing electronic money and throwing it at the problem, perhaps for a few more years or even a few more decades, but sooner or later we all know this system doesn't work anymore. We are being bought into a fantasy and a dream which cannot be sustained, and that something else is needed if we're to move forward. Look at the catastrophic consequences of a society over-monopolistically dependent on the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. Look at the issue of global starvation. Look at the fact we can't even solve that problem, that millions around the world go to bed hungry every night. We can't solve that problem. Look at the Amazon jungle. Look at the destruction of the rainforest. Look at the ridiculous result of the pursuit of short-term goals, short-term profits, cutting down the rainforest to plant soybean farms. You know, what a mad idea. Only an insane global society could tolerate such an abuse, such incredible stupidity. We clearly are in a state of insanity. We are able to mobilize billions and billions and trillions of dollars for warfare, for hatred, for fear, for suspicion. You know, you just look at the way the politicians play this game, find the next person to hate, and then mobilize billions of dollars of our money to throw weapons at them. But we cannot, as a global society, solve the problem of the destruction of that sacred realm, the Amazon rainforest, which, believe me, could be solved for far less money than the money we spend on war and chaos. Clearly, there's something wrong with our priorities. That business of the soya bean farms, you know, if you cut down rainforest and plant a soya bean farm, within 10 or 12 years, you won't be growing soya beans there anymore, because rainforest soils maintain their fertility by the constant dropping of the leaves and the constant refertilization of the soil. You turn that into a farm, it's done for within a decade. We know this already. We know it from Indonesia. It's been proven, but for some reason we keep on doing it. And I would say that what's at the root of this is what shamans, when I asked shamans in the Amazon about this, what do you think is really the problem with global technological culture? And they said it's very simple. You guys have severed your connection with spirit. If you do not reconnect with spirit, you're going to bring the whole house of cards down on your heads and on ours. Something desperately needs to be done. And that's why many shamans in the Amazon and from the Amazon are today conducting a kind of reverse missionary activity and are traveling, sometimes at great personal danger, out to the West, out to Western countries, out to Japan and America and Germany and Britain, and bringing ayahuasca to those countries, because they believe that we are so fixed and rooted in this particularly damaging and dangerous state of consciousness that we so idolize, that we need a huge kick up the ass if we're going to get out of it. And they believe that, rightly or wrongly, that ayahuasca is the remedy for that. If we're going to work with ayahuasca in the West, we need to develop our own form of shamanism. We need to sit at the feet of those shamans from the Amazon, we need to learn from them, and we need to develop structures that work within a global, complicated technological culture. But I have a feeling that they're right, and that it could be the remedy. And it's very small at the moment, and it doesn't have to be ayahuasca. There are many, many other ways that I see happening all around the world now, that people feel the need to explore other states of consciousness. And for some, indeed, it is rhythmic dancing. For some, it's meditation, perhaps even hypnotism. Lots of techniques to get us out of that alert problem-solving mode and into another state of consciousness where we can contemplate other possibilities that previously we would not have explored. And I think it's vitally and urgently necessary that we go down this road now, and that we put the alert problem-solving state of consciousness in the place where it belongs. It has a role, but it should not be universally dominant. And the sense of being interconnected with other realms and other intelligences and other entities are shut down by that state of consciousness. And we need to reconnect to those other realities if we're to move ahead as a global civilization. I think we're in a terribly dangerous place at the moment. And the only way forward out of the mess we've created is to reconnect with spirit at every possible level of our lives. And the only antidote for hatred and fear and suspicion is love. And love is giving. It is not taking. We have to completely reorient our position and our posture in life if we are to survive as a species and not waste the incredible opportunity we've all been given to be born in a human body. When I look back on what happened in the Stone Age and the sudden transformation of humanity that occurred then, it's clear to me that these visionary experiences are actually fundamental to what makes us human, and have played a key role, often hidden, often disguised, in the human story. And therefore, I think that we're making a huge mistake as a society to demonize these altered states of consciousness. We may possibly be denying ourselves the next vital step in our own evolution. And who knows, perhaps our immortal destiny as well. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So what a wonderful, wonderful message, and it takes courage to bring forth this truth. And Graham has remarkable dignity and the will, and that's why I believe that this message is so important, and I so agree. And I think this man is a walking master that brings the truth, and there are so many that do not want to hear the truth, and we have to know it. We have to know that we move into these other forms of consciousness, not put our heads in the sand, but we co-create the earth that we want in theta consciousness. So another round of applause, please.
dreams really do come true. Ooh, someday you wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind. Be where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dare to, oh why can't I? Oh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind. Be where trouble melts like a lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. And the dreams that you dare to, why, oh why can't I?